I never expected her to remember my name, let alone everything else. That thought hit me again the moment she pushed open the glass door of the small corner cafe. The bell above it gave its tired ring, the kind that sounded more like a cough, and she stepped in like she always did, smoothing the sleeve of her coat before looking around. She never rushed. She scanned the room the way some people read a page twice before turning it. I tried not to stare. I failed the same way I did every week. She noticed me. Of course she did. But her eyes lingered just half a second too long. Just long enough for something in my chest to tighten and loosen at the same time. Her hair was tied loosely today, a few strands falling across her cheek. She tucked them behind her ear as she walked to the counter. Her name was Rania, my friend's mom. I wasn't even supposed to be here this often. It just became habit. Monday morning, same table, same lukewarm cappuccino I never finished. The barista didn't even ask anymore. She just placed it in front of me with a nod. Maybe she assumed I was writing something important on my laptop, but mostly it was just blank tabs and half-typed messages I deleted before hitting send. Rania placed her order softly, her voice low, warm. I tried to look busy, tapping the keyboard, scrolling nothing. But when she glanced back at me, I felt caught, like she could see through all the half-truths I told myself. I folded my napkin into smaller and smaller squares, stupid habit, until it was a tight little shape between my fingers. She walked over before I could unfold it again. "You're early today," she said. I shrugged. Couldn't sleep. She gave a small hum, not quite a comment, not quite sympathy. Her eyes flicked to the napkin I was folding, then back to my face. A quiet moment stretched between us. Not uncomfortable, just aware. She set her bag on the chair opposite mine. Not sitting yet, just occupying the space. "You always make things look tense," she said, nodding at my hands. I laughed once, under my breath. "I don't mean to." "I know," she replied. "That's the dangerous part." Dangerous. She said it lightly, but something in her gaze didn't match the tone. She sat down then, smoothing the strap of her bag. She had this calm way of moving, even when she seemed tired. Her fingers wrapped around the cup the barista brought her, holding it as if she needed the warmth more than the coffee. We talked about nothing. Her late grocery run, my job search that was going nowhere, whether that couldn't decide between rain or heat. Our words drifted and bumped, unfinished at the edges. But every time her eyes met mine, the silence felt more honest than anything we said. A quiet hum of the cafe wrapped around us. Espresso machine, chairs scraping, someone tapping a spoon. But the moment felt separate somehow, like the rest of the room faded a little. At one point, she glanced at my laptop screen, still blank, and smiled the smallest bit. "What were you trying to write?" she asked. "Something," I said, but the words didn't show up. She nodded like she understood too well. They never do when you need them. She stood up first, adjusted her coat, looked at me again, in that searching way that made me forget I was supposed to look away. "I'll see you around," she said. Then, almost as she turned, her voice softened. "Don't stay stuck in your head too long." She left with the same slow push of the glass door. The cafe bell coughed again. I exhaled only after she disappeared around the corner. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed on the table. An unread message. From a number I didn't save, but knew instantly. 5 words. "You walked me home once." I stared at the screen, the napkin still folded in my hand, and realized she remembered more than just my name. I didn't reply to her message right away. I just stared at it, thumb hovering above the keyboard while the cafe buzzed around me like background static. "You walked me home once." She didn't add a question mark. Didn't add context. Just a door cracked open, waiting to see whether I could step through without making noise. I typed "yeah, I remember" and deleted it. Typed "is everything okay?" and deleted that too. In the end, I sent nothing. But I walked by her street that evening anyway, slowly, like I wasn't supposed to be there. The lights in her living room were on, curtains half drawn. I almost kept going, but she opened the door before I reached the steps. "You're predictable," she said, folding her arms. It wasn't an accusation, more like she'd been expecting the shape of my hesitation. I wasn't. I just thought maybe. "Come inside," she said, saving me from myself. Her apartment smelled faintly of jasmine tea and something warm on the stove. She kicked off her shoes lightly and walked ahead, not checking if I followed. I did. On her dining table, a stack of unpaid bills sat under a decorative stone. A grocery list was scribbled on the back of an envelope. The place looked lived in, not curated, and somehow that made me feel more intrusive. She poured tea for both of us. You really don't remember, do you? I do, I said quickly. It was raining. You didn't want to walk alone. Her eyes softened in a way that made me warm and uneasy. No, I'm surprised you remember me. I didn't know what to say to that. So I watched the steam rise from my cup. Her hand brushed the side of it, steadying mine without thinking, before she pulled back. My son used to talk about you all the time, she added. Smart, quiet. I always assumed you'd outgrow this place. I haven't, I said too honestly. She hummed, like she heard something I didn't intend to say. She sat in the chair beside me, not across. Close enough that when she tucked her hair back, I could smell her shampoo. She held her tea with both hands, staring at the surface as if it might tell her something she didn't want to hear. I'm divorced, she said casually, or trying to make it casual. 5 years now. People assume that means I'm available. It's exhausting. The admission caught me off guard. Not because she hid it, everyone vaguely knew, but because she chose to say it to me. Does it bother you? I asked. She laughed softly. Only when someone looks at me like I'm supposed to be a lesson. I don't, I said. It came out fast, too fast. Then what do you see? She asked. The question pressed against my ribs. I didn't answer. Couldn't. She didn't push. Instead, she noticed the way I kept glancing toward her hands. She placed one on the table, palm open, not touching me, just close enough to make the air shift. My heart thudded stupidly. I didn't take it. She didn't seem disappointed. You walked me home once, she repeated, softer. I guess I wondered if you'd do it again. And before I could speak, she nudged her shoulder gently against mine. Barely a touch, almost a joke, but it held something careful, something fragile, something both of us pretended not to name. A gesture small enough to ignore, and impossible to forget. Rania didn't ask me to walk her home again, but the next morning she found me anyway. I was leaving my apartment when I saw her in the hallway, keys in one hand, grocery bag in the other. She paused when our eyes met, like she hadn't expected the timing to line up, but wasn't unhappy that it did. You're up early, she said. Could say the same. She gave a small smile, the kind that appeared and disappeared in the same breath. None of this was planned, but there was a pull between us, something quiet and unsteady. We walked downstairs together, not touching, not talking much, just sharing the same narrow air of the staircase. Outside, the morning was colder than it should have been. She shifted the grocery bag to her other arm, and without thinking, I reached to help. She hesitated, a fractional pause, then let me take it. That tiny surrender felt like a whole sentence she didn't say. We walked toward the parking area. She pressed her car key, but before she could load the bag, someone called my name. My friend. Her son. He jogged over, earbuds in, completely unaware of the charged silence between us. Rania stepped slightly away from me, subtle, but deliberate, and something in my chest tightened. Dude, I haven't seen you in weeks, he said, clapping my shoulder. Mom, you heading out? Work, she replied, her voice a little too even. You two should catch up. She didn't look at me when she said it. That stung more than it should have. We talked for a minute. Nothing important. But the whole time, I felt her presence like a pulse behind me. When he finally walked off, she let out a breath she'd been holding. You should have said something, I murmured. I couldn't. She kept her eyes on the car. Not with him standing there. Right. Her son. My friend. The line neither of us wanted to admit was there. I wasn't doing anything wrong, I said too quietly. That's the problem. Her voice softened. It doesn't feel wrong. She shut the trunk gently, like noise might break the fragile moment hanging between us. Then she walked around to the driver's side, opened the door, closed it again without getting in. I don't know what you're expecting from me, she said, not accusing, just tired. Sometimes you look at me like, she stopped, looked away, started again, slower. Like you haven't decided if you want to stay close or run. I'm not running. That's what scares me. Wind moved through the parking lot, brushing her hair across her face. I reached to tuck it back. Instinct, nothing more, but she caught my wrist halfway. Not pushing me away. Not pulling me closer. Just holding the moment still. "We can't do this," she whispered. "We're not doing anything." Her fingers loosened but didn't fall away. "But you want to." The honesty between us felt too large for a morning this quiet. She let my wrist go first. The loss of her touch felt sharper than it should have. "I should go," she said, "before this becomes something we can't walk back from." I opened my mouth, maybe to stop her, maybe to finally admit something, but she stepped back. Her voice dropped, barely a breath. "Don't look at me like that." "How am I looking at you?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to, because she took one small step toward me. Just one. Like her body forgot the rules her mind was trying so hard to follow. Her hand hovered near my arm. Almost a touch, almost permission. We stood there, caught in a thin line of morning light, close enough that I felt her breath shift. If I leaned forward an inch, if she didn't pull away, but she did. Barely. Just enough to stop the moment from breaking into something real. "Not yet," she whispered, voice trembling in that way people pretend is steady. Then she slipped into her car and shut the door. We came that close. Close enough that my skin still felt the ghost of her hand. It happened on a Thursday, a day too ordinary to carry the weight it ended up holding. I ran into her on the small walking path behind our apartment complex. She was sitting on a wooden bench, work bag on the ground, shoulders slightly curved forward like she'd been holding herself together all day and finally got tired. She didn't hear me at first. I almost walked past, but she lifted her head at the exact second I hesitated. "You don't have to sit," she said, even though she'd already moved her bag to make space. I sat. The late afternoon light made everything feel too honest. Her hair was a little frizzy from the humidity, her blouse wrinkled at the elbows, mascara smudged subtly under her eyes. She looked real in a way she never allowed herself to. "Long day?" I asked. She nodded but didn't speak. Instead, she rubbed her thumb along the bench's edge, a repetitive motion, like she was grounding herself. A small, private gesture. I tried not to watch her hand, failed. After a moment, she said, "Your friend came by today." My chest tightened. "Why?" "Just to check on something. He mentioned you've been distant." "He noticed?" People always notice the wrong things. She breathed out slowly. "He asked if you were okay." I didn't know what to say. A knot pulled tight between us. Guilt. Fear. Something unspoken weaving through the quiet. "You could have told him I'm fine." I didn't want to lie. Her voice wavered. Subtle. Barely there. But I heard it. I turned toward her, searching her expression. She looked straight ahead at the path, eyes unfocused. "Rania," I said. Soft. Too soft. She blinked once. Twice. Then finally looked at me. Something raw flickered in her gaze. Not longing, not exactly. More like fear mixed with wanting, a combination she'd been trying to hide. "This is getting too close," she said quietly. "I can't pretend it isn't." I swallowed. "I know. You don't," she whispered. "You're young. You think wanting something is the same as surviving it." The words hit harder than they should have. "You think I don't understand what's at risk?" "You don't," she repeated, but her voice cracked, betraying her. We sat in silence. Birds somewhere in the trees. Cars in the distance. Her breathing, small and uneven. Then she said it. I thought I had more control than this. Not shouted. Not emotional. Just defeated. It slipped out of her like truth she'd been clutching in her fist for days. I didn't move, but I felt the shift, something in her breaking open and spilling quietly into the space between us. "Tell me what you're afraid of," I murmured. She gave a hollow laugh. "You. I'm afraid of you." My breath caught. "Why?" "Because you look at me like I'm still someone worth choosing." Her hand trembled once before she folded it into her lap. "And I don't know how to handle that anymore." A confession without the word confession. The sun dipped lower, shadows stretching across the path. She leaned back against the bench, closing her eyes, as if letting herself feel the moment for the first time. "I can't keep pretending this is nothing," she whispered. "And I can't let it become something either." Her voice softened further, barely audible. "Tell me what I'm supposed to do." The question floated between us, fragile, trembling, dangerous. I opened my mouth. I almost answered, almost reached for her hand, almost closed the distance. But the moment hung there, breathless, suspended in the space where something irreversible hovered just an inch away. Her eyes opened slightly, searching mine, waiting, bracing, wanting. The question still there, unspoken and echoing. What happens if we stop pretending? ChatGPT can make mistakes. Check important info. She didn't come to the cafe that Monday. I kept glancing at the door anyway, pretending to read the same paragraph for 20 straight minutes. The bell above it gave its usual tired cough every time someone walked in, but it was never her. No soft coat sleeve, no slow scan of the room, no leftover warmth of eye contact. Just absence, quiet, ordinary, heavy. I told myself not to think too much. Maybe she was busy. Maybe work ran late. Maybe she needed space. But by Wednesday, when I still hadn't seen her, something inside me curled in on itself. I didn't text. She didn't text either. The silence between us wasn't angry or cold. It felt suspended, like someone had pressed pause on a moment we weren't ready to name. By Thursday evening, frustration pushed me out of my apartment. I found myself walking toward her place. No real plan, just an ache of unfinished words. Her lights were on, a soft glow behind thin curtains, but the door stayed closed. I almost knocked. Almost. Instead, I stood there with my hand hovering, like the story would shift if I breathed differently. Then her son stepped into the hallway behind me. "Oh, hey," he said, surprised. "Looking for my mom?" My chest tightened. "No, just passing by." He didn't question it, but his expression changed, subtle and sharp. Concern? Suspicion? Maybe nothing. It was enough to make me step back. Enough to remind me that the line between us wasn't just age or fear, but people who could get hurt without even knowing why. "She's been home all week," he said casually. "Work stuff." And my dad called. I tried not to react. "Your dad?" "Yeah. Wants to talk to her. Some closure thing." He shrugged. "He shows up like a guest star in his own story." My stomach dropped. He didn't notice. "I should go," I said quickly. "Yeah, man. Take care." He went inside. The door shut. I stood there a long moment before walking away. The next morning, she finally appeared. Not at the cafe. Not in the hallway. Outside, near the parking lot, placing a bag in her trunk. Her movements were tight, controlled, the opposite of the soft pauses she used to have. She saw me, stopped, closed the trunk slowly. "You've been avoiding me," I said, voice thinner than I meant. "I haven't," but her eyes said otherwise. "What changed?" Her lips tightened. "Nothing changed. That's the problem." The air between us thickened, not anger, not longing, something more fragile. "If this is because of your ex, don't," she whispered. I stopped. The word felt like a wall. She looked down at her keys, turning them in her hand. A nervous tick I'd never seen before. "He called," she finally said. And I realized, I'm not done being tired of him yet. I'm not done being tired of myself either. It wasn't a request for pity. It wasn't self-loathing. It was truth. Exposed. Raw. "I need space," she added softly. "Just for a little while. I need to hear my own thoughts again." I nodded, even though the motion hurt. She exhaled, shaky, almost relieved I didn't fight her. "You've been kind to me. Too kind." And I started leaning on that. "Leaning on you." "You can't," I said. "I shouldn't." A small, sad smile flickered. "You're younger. Hopeful. You still believe in things. I don't want to take that from you." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. She stepped closer, not enough to touch, but close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating off her. "It's not goodbye. It's, I need to stop before I break something neither of us can fix." Her voice cracked on the last word. She turned away before I could answer. I stood there, hands useless at my sides, watching her get into the car. She didn't look back. The engine started, and the sound felt louder than it should have. When she drove off, the space she left behind felt like a sentence missing its last line. Later, in my apartment, I typed her a message. "If you need me, I'm here." I stared at it. Thumb hovered. Heart stuck between beats. Then I pressed backspace. Deleted the whole thing. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. The overhead light hummed softly, washing the kitchen in a pale glow. She stood by the sink, both hands braced on the cool countertop. He lingered in the doorway, not entering, not retreating, just watching her shoulders rise and fall in uneven breaths. Neither had expected tonight to end like this. But silence has a way of cornering people. You didn't have to stay, she said without looking up. He swallowed. I know. She finally turned. Her eyes were tired, not red or dramatic, just tired, the way someone looks after carrying something too long. Then why are you here? He didn't move closer, didn't smile, didn't try to soften anything. Because if I left, it would have felt like I was running again. A small exhale escaped her, almost a laugh, but not quite. You usually do. I know. His voice cracked, not loud enough to echo, but loud enough that she heard it. The clock ticked once, the sound slicing the space between them. She crossed her arms, not defensive, more like holding herself steady. You could have told me earlier. All the times you avoided the question, all the half answers, you could have said something real. He nodded. I was scared. Of me? No, he shook his head. Of what it would mean if I said the truth out loud. Her jaw tightened. And what truth is that? This was the moment. A choice. Speak or stay silent. Risk or retreat. He stepped into the light. Not dramatically. Just enough that she could see he wasn't hiding. That I care. More than I should. More than I meant to. He let out a shaky breath. And that losing whatever we already have feels worse than not having anything at all. She blinked, once, slowly. No sudden tears. No gasp. Just a woman listening to something she'd waited too long to hear. You think I'm not scared too? She asked softly. I know you are. She looked at the floor, rubbed her thumb across her palm. I didn't want to push you. I thought if I pushed, you'd disappear. I almost did, he admitted. But I didn't want to wonder anymore. She lifted her gaze, meeting his fully for the first time tonight. There it was, everything they had avoided sitting plain and unpolished between them. So what now? She asked. He shrugged, helpless, honest. I don't know. I just know I don't want to run. She took a slow step forward. Not an embrace, not a leap, just closing the distance by inches. Close enough to feel the warmth between them, barely touching. Her fingers brushed his, light, tentative. A test he could still fail. He didn't pull away. The smallest breath left her, like she'd been holding it for months. Okay, she whispered. He nodded, eyes softening. Okay. No fireworks. No grand declaration. Just two people choosing not to hide anymore. And in the quiet kitchen, that was enough. The morning after their quiet, overdue confession, nothing dramatic happened. No sudden transformation. No sweeping declarations. They simply woke up, each in their own place, made their usual drinks, her tea, his black coffee, and went on with their day. But something was different, and they both felt it. For the first time in months, neither of them avoided the 8:47 a.m. message. He sent a simple good morning. She replied with a small photo of her steaming mug. That was all. It was enough. Days turned into weeks. Routines adjusted themselves gradually, like the way seasons shift without making announcements. He started stopping by her place after work, not every day, not on any set schedule, just often enough that the quiet of her kitchen didn't feel so heavy anymore. She returned the favor with small gestures, an extra container of food set aside for him, a folded blanket waiting on the back of his couch. They didn't call it anything. They didn't need to. On Thursdays, they returned to their bench, the one they had avoided for too long. The first time, they sat on opposite ends, knees not touching, breaths visible in the chill. The second time, he shifted closer. The third time, she leaned against him just slightly, a natural tilt of trust rather than a statement. By the fourth Thursday, their hands found each other without hesitation. Earned, not declared. Their friends noticed. Not through dramatic behavior or sudden romance, but through small changes. The way she smiled more often, the way he stopped deflecting every personal question with humor. No one asked. They didn't offer explanations. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. He still struggled with being open. She still had moments where she questioned whether she was asking for too much. But now they talked, quietly, honestly, without pretending they didn't care. One evening, months later, they found themselves in her kitchen again. The same overhead light hummed softly, but the air felt different, lighter, lived in. He handed her a cup of tea without being asked. She nudged a jar of instant coffee toward him, even though both of them knew he hated it. It had become a joke he pretended to be annoyed by. She took a sip and leaned against the counter. "We've come a long way," she said. He shrugged, pretending casual. "We're still us." She looked at him, really looked. "Yeah, that's the point." He stepped closer, not out of fear this time, but familiarity. His hand grazed the back of hers, their fingers brushing like a habit they never wanted to break. "Remember that night?" she asked softly, "when everything almost fell apart?" He nodded. "Hard to forget." She smiled, warm and knowing. "Good." He didn't ask why. He didn't need to. They stood there in the quiet kitchen. No grand ending. No cinematic moment. Just two people who had finally learned how to stay. Later, as they stepped outside for their evening walk, he held the door open and murmured, barely audible, "8:47 tomorrow." She squeezed his hand. Always. A small promise. One only they understood.